You were almost there. The deal was nearly closed. The project was 1 week from done. The relationship was finally working. And then, without meaning to, you ruined it. But somehow, you did. This is not bad luck. This is something psychologists have been studying for decades, and it has a name. It is called self-sabotage. And the strange truth is this: the closer you get to success, the more likely it becomes. Today, you are going to find out why your own mind sometimes works against the very things you want most, and what it is actually trying to protect you from. Let's start with a question that sounds backwards. What if some part of you is afraid of success, not failure? That sounds absurd at first. Why would anyone be afraid of getting what they want? But researchers have identified a real psychological pattern called fear of success, an unconscious resistance to achieving your goals, even when you consciously, desperately want them. It is a genuine internal paradox. Part of you is striving forward. Another part of you is quietly working against that exact effort. And this has nothing to do with laziness or lack of ambition. In fact, it often happens most to people who care the most. So what is this fear actually made of? Why would your brain treat success, the thing you have been working toward, as a threat? The answer lies in what success actually changes. When you fail at something, nothing changes. Your life stays familiar. People's expectations of you stay the same. You stay safely inside the identity you already know how to live with. But when you succeed, really succeed, everything shifts. New responsibilities appear. New expectations form. People start looking at you differently. You are no longer the person who is trying. You are now the person who is supposed to deliver again and again at a level you have never had to sustain before. To your brain, that is not a reward. That is an unknown. And your brain does not like unknowns. It treats unfamiliar situations, even good ones, as a kind of risk. Suddenly visible, suddenly responsible, suddenly expected to keep performing at this new level forever. Some part of your mind looks at that future and quietly decides, this is more dangerous than staying where I am. This is where self-sabotage begins, not as a conscious decision, as a protective one. Let's look at how this actually shows up, because it rarely looks like sabotage while it is happening. It looks like something else entirely. Pattern number 1, the almost done project that never gets finished. You know this one. The presentation that is 90% ready, but you keep finding one more thing to fix. The book you have been writing for years, always one more edit away from being sent out. The application that sits in your drafts, technically complete, but somehow never quite ready to submit. Here is what is actually happening. As long as something is unfinished, it cannot be judged. An almost finished project still lives in the safe world of potential. It could be amazing in theory because it has not been tested yet. But the moment you finish it and send it out, that potential becomes a verdict. It either works or it does not. And for some part of your mind, an unfinished project that might be great feels safer than a finished one that might be rejected. So your standards mysteriously rise the closer you get to the finish line. The thing that felt good enough yesterday suddenly feels not quite ready today. This is not perfectionism in the way people usually mean it. This is your mind quietly keeping the project in a state where it never has to face a final judgment. Pattern number 2, the crisis that appears right before the deadline. This one is almost eerie in how consistent it is. You have a big presentation tomorrow, and tonight you finally have the interview that could change your career. And the night before, your sleep schedule collapses, or your laptop crashes, or some unrelated emergency consumes your entire evening. These events feel completely real. They feel like bad luck, like the universe conspiring against you. And often they are real. The argument did happen, the laptop really did crash. But notice the timing. These disruptions tend to cluster right before the moments that matter most. And when they happen, they give you something valuable without you ever having to ask for it, a reason. Now, if things do not go perfectly, there is an explanation that has nothing to do with your ability. I would have done better, but I was distracted. I would have nailed it, but I barely slept. The outcome stays uncertain, but your sense of who you are stays protected. Here is what this looks like in real life. Imagine a student who studies for months for one important exam. He has done the work. He knows the material. The exam is tomorrow morning, and tonight, the one night he should sleep, arrow. He stays up for hours scrolling his phone, not studying, not relaxing, just scrolling long past midnight. Why would someone do this the night before something they have prepared for so long? Because if he walks into that exam tomorrow on no sleep and he does not do as well as he hoped, there is already an explanation waiting. I was exhausted. I couldn't think straight. If I'd slept properly, I would have done so much better. And that story, that comfortable, ready-made story, is easier to live with than the alternative. The alternative is sleeping 8 hours, walking in fully prepared, doing his absolute best, and finding out that his absolute best was not enough. That is the outcome his mind is quietly working to prevent him from ever having to face. Not because he does not care, but because he cares so much that the idea of trying his hardest and still falling short feels unbearable. So some part of him reaches for the phone instead. Pattern number 3, pulling away right when things start going well. A relationship starts to feel real, stable, good, and suddenly you start finding reasons it will not work. A friendship deepens, and you start pulling back, getting busy, creating distance. A project gains momentum, people start noticing, opportunities start opening, and you find yourself slowing down, second-guessing, withdrawing from the very thing that was working. This pattern is often the most confusing one, because from the outside, it looks like self-destruction with no logic at all. But from the inside, it makes a strange kind of sense. If something good is taken away from you, that is painful. But it is a kind of pain you already know how to survive. You have experienced loss before. You know what that feels like. But sustained success, being seen, being relied upon, being good at something in front of people who are watching, that might be unfamiliar territory. And unfamiliar territory to your brain can feel more frightening than a pain you already recognize. Now here's the part that connects everything together, and it might be the most important idea in this entire video. These patterns are not random. They are not a personality flaw. They are protective strategies. And they were often built a long time ago for reasons that made sense at the time. Think about how most of us learn what success means. As children, success often was not just about the achievement itself. It was about how people around us reacted to it. A good grade brought praise. A mistake brought criticism, disappointment, sometimes shame. Over time, without anyone intending it, a connection can form. Being good at something is what makes me valuable. Being seen is what makes me vulnerable. If I am not good enough, I lose love. If I am too good, the expectations become unbearable. And the fall, if it ever comes, will be from a much greater height. Neither of those feels safe. So the mind finds a third option: stay in the middle. Try, but not too hard. Get close, but not all the way there. Be good, but not so good that everyone is watching. This is not something anyone chooses on purpose. It is a pattern that gets built quietly over years, often without a single moment you could point to and say, that is when it started. And because it was built to protect you from criticism, from pressure, from the fear of losing people's approval, it does not feel like sabotage from the inside. It feels like caution. It feels like realism. It feels like, I'm just not ready yet, or this isn't the right time, or I work better under pressure anyway. But here is the cost. Every time this pattern activates, it does not just block one outcome. It teaches your mind, again, that getting close to success is followed by retreat. And the next time you get close, the pattern activates a little faster, a little easier, with a little less resistance. The pattern strengthens itself simply by repeating. So what do you do with this? The first thing, and this might be the most useful thing in this entire video, is simply to notice the pattern without immediately trying to fight it. If you find yourself endlessly polishing something that was ready weeks ago, pause and ask, am I improving this, or am I protecting myself from finishing it? If a crisis appears right before something important, Notice it without immediately believing the story that this is just bad luck. Again, if you find yourself pulling away from something that is going well, notice the urge to create distance before you act on it. You do not need to force yourself to act differently in that moment. You do not need to override the feeling through sheer willpower, because, as you may already know, that rarely works for long. What changes things is simply seeing the pattern clearly enough to recognize it when it is happening. Because a pattern that operates in the dark controls you completely. A pattern you can see, even if you cannot stop it right away, starts to lose some of its power. You are no longer just living inside the story. You are watching it happen, which means some part of you is no longer fully inside it. Over time, that small space, the space between the urge and the action, is where everything changes. Not because the fear disappears, but because you start to recognize it for what it actually is. Not truth, not a sign that you are not ready, not proof that something is wrong, just an old familiar signal, firing because something important is happening. You are almost there, and some part of you, a part that has been trying to protect you for a very long time, got scared and reached for the brakes. That part of you is not your enemy. It was trying to keep you safe, using the only tools it had, learned a long time ago, in circumstances that no longer apply. But you are not in those circumstances anymore. And the version of your life that is waiting just past that fear, it is still there. It has not gone anywhere. It is simply waiting for you to recognize the moment the brakes start to engage, and to choose gently to keep going anyway.